Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Delaware Public Service Commission meeting of August 23rd. We have the meeting minutes of August 9th, 2016 to consider. Does any commissioner wish to have any changes made to the proposed minutes? Hearing none, could we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve. Second?
Any discussion with respect to the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. The consent agenda, there are 3 items on the consent agenda. Does any commissioner desire to take a matter off of the consent agenda?
Move we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the consent agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed or any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. And gosh, it sounds like the acoustics in here are actually working like they're supposed to work.
I wondered why you were echoing.
So hopefully everybody on the internet can hear us clearly with the system's working. Thank you to whoever made that happen. Regular agenda. First matter is in the matter of the partial objection of Constellation New Energy Incorporated to a Freedom of Information Act request for third-party confidential records. Just the parties please come forward. And if just for the record, all the commissioners have received the documents in question and have obviously the objection of Constellation New Energy in front of them, and we have also received the memorandum from Commission Counsel. I don't expect that we're going to be going into executive session. I don't expect that we're going to be talking about any confidential information, but I would like to hear from the objector, Constellation New Energy, with respect to their position on this matter.
Thank you.
Name, please. I forgot your name.
Of course. My name is Jeffrey Grivner of the law firm of Buchanan, Ingersoll & Rooney, located in Wilmington, Delaware, here on behalf of Constellation New Energy Incorporated. On July 20th, Constellation was notified of an online request by the Commission pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act for a copy of Constellation's response to the request for proposal to the Electricity Affordability Committee dated February 26, 2016. This RFP related to the state of Delaware's opt-in electric supply program. By the letter that was submitted to the Commission on August 1st, 2016, Constellation fully objected to the release of the document that was requested. Since that time, Constellation has worked with counsel for the Commission to propose a partial objection to the request. And that partial objection notes certain redactions that Constellation is comfortable making with respect to the RFP and then have the document released. Those specific redactions relate to description of Constellation's pricing model, pricing for each of the services, as well as a description of the offered products. All of this information Constellation views to be confidential and proprietary. The pricing obviously relates to Constellation's business strategies and the pricing models it uses. With respect to the information relating to the products that are offered, Constellation views this information to also be confidential, as it is sensitive business information relating to the manner in which Constellation packages its various products. And for these reasons, also noting the fact that under the Commission's regulations that there's a rebuttable presumption that the information claimed to be confidential is in fact confidential until otherwise ruled by the Commission, Constellation requests that Constellation's RFP be redacted in the manner requested and then released pursuant to the FOIA request.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. Ms. Rayrack?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. As Counsel for Constellation New Energy has summarized, we did receive a FOIA request the FOIA requested information that had been marked as confidential by Constellation New Energy. We went through the process of notifying Constellation New Energy, and they have come up with a partial redaction, I believe, on a document that is 50 pages long. There are partial redactions on 5 pages, and that information, I have reviewed it. I believe that they have met their burden of proof in their objection that this does contain confidential, proprietary financial information and trade secrets. The question before the Commission today is whether Constellation New Energy Incorporated has met that burden of proof as to their objection. Again, in a FOIA request, there is no standing for the requesting party to justify their request or explain their request. It's simply a matter of whether the party filing the information has met that burden of proof as to its confidentiality. And I believe they have. That is the question before the Commission today.
Thank you, Ms. Mayorek. Ms. Holly Rachel Smith.
Mr. Chairman, Holly Rachel Smith appearing on behalf of Constellation. We really appreciate the staff's understanding of the sensitive nature of the information contained in the RFP. I do want to point out that Constellation's objection was as to the disclosure of the entire document, and our preference would be that the Commission consider not releasing the document at all as the correct way to rule here with regard to the fact that, the RFP itself, when it was issued, it indicated that the responses would be confidential. And so I think that's most compelling. So in the instance that there's overwhelming evidence that we should disclose the RFP to the requester, then I would drop back to the redacted version. But I really think that given that Constellation wasn't the winning bidder here, and that these processes are intended to get the lowest prices for consumers, and that with the going into bidding situations and knowing that our confidential information is going to be released to competitors, I just think the process would suit the consumers more if indeed there was no release of this document. Thank you for your consideration.
Ms. Mayorek.
In response to that, typically when a company chooses to bid in a request for proposal with state government, the understanding is that that is a public process and that documentation, unless it is marked, specifically marked confidential, is potentially releasable upon a FOIA request. In this case, the entire document was marked confidential, and it's rare that an entire document, every word of it, is confidential, which is why I think we've arrived at a reasonable subset of redactions. So I would disagree with the proposal that the entire document be redacted and not released per the FOIA request, and that we go with the subset, which I believe we had reached agreement upon.
Ms. Smith.
I still think that in the best interest of, Constellation is here representing its interest with regard to its information that it put together in a bid in response to the state, and the document itself says that its bids would be confidential and that we would prefer that it not be released.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions of the parties? Anybody have any comments about the evidence or what you're thinking with respect to your judgment on this matter?
Chair, I have one question. Mr. Mayorek, do we have a precedent for how we have treated matters such as these in the past?
In what respect, Commissioner, if you could clarify?
With respect to the full documents being confidential as opposed to redacted segments of the document.
For a document to not be released pursuant to a FOIA request, it has to meet one of the enumerated exemptions under FOIA. So if an entire document met a FOIA request, then yes, we would deny its release. So in this case, I do not believe that this entire document meets one of these exceptions. I believe the 5 redacted pages do. So that's my view. I mean, entire or not, entire document versus a subset of the document, it has to meet one of the FOIA exemptions. And in this case, the exemption at issue is confidential trade secrets and financial information.
No further questions.
Am I correct in understanding that they have agreed to the redacted portions?
That was my understanding. So yes, the initial objection was to the document in its entirety. Upon discussions with counsel, we came up with this 5-page subset. Now, I believe the request before the commission is that the entire document not be released. So the question for the commission is whether they've met their burden of proof with respect to meeting one of those FOIA exemptions for the entire document or the 5 pages. You have the entire document in front of you. I mean, you've had a chance to review it.
So a question for the witness, or either of the witnesses. So was this burden of proof made clear for you in the process of negotiating this compromise?
I think the conversations were between Ms. Mayrock were made with my colleague, who is not present today, but my understanding is, based on the discussions that they had, that the burden of proof was made clear, while our request to keep the entire document confidential certainly stood throughout this process. In an effort to reach a reasonable compromise, we have proposed the redacted version as a version that outlines the information that Constellation, without question, feels a need to keep confidential. The position of Constellation continues, however, that all of the information is confidential in nature, and the request would be to keep the entire document confidential, but at a minimum, the redacted materials remain confidential, the proposed redacted materials.
Commissioner, as we stated in our August 1st letter, that we did request that the entire document be protected, but should that be denied, we would be happy to provide a redacted version, so that we could work this out in a very efficient manner.
Don't we already have a redacted version?
That's what's before you with the yellow tabs on the 5-page.
I have a question.
This question is for Ms. Mayrock. Notwithstanding that you typically don't see a document marked in total confidential, this was presented in total as confidential. Is that not meeting one of those exemptions? If a document is marked confidential, does it not meet one of the FOIA exemptions?
I actually see a lot of documents that are marked wholly confidential, and they are not. About 100% of the time, they are not. 99% of the time. So, I mean, we have a lot of filings coming into this commission via our Delaware file system that are marked confidential on the whole, and they are not confidential on the whole. So I think there is often an over-designation of confidentiality in filings before this commission. So the way our FOIA regulations work is we give that designation the benefit of the doubt until we have a FOIA request, and then we have to actually look at it page by page. So I think what happened was, yes, it came in, it was marked confidential. The RFP process went through. There was really no reason to scrutinize that designation. However, now we have a FOIA request, so it required going through it page by page. I think on a page by page designation, there's a presumption until we have to look at it. When we look at it, then you have to ask, is it really confidential? Is it really trade secrets? Is it really something proprietary about the information on this page? And upon that review, if we've come down to 5 pages that really have confidential and proprietary information on them. They're maintaining their objection for the entire document. That's their prerogative. They can do that. But I believe there's a subset when we really get down to it and scrutinize what should be designated confidential to those 5 pages.
Ms. Smith, will you give me an example that's not presently redacted of some factual information without discussing it that you believe is confidential?
I think the nature of this particular document's a little different because it is an RFP proposal, and it shows how we would put together a proposal and bid. And I think that this might be the first type of proposal that's here before the commission. So I think that, the fact that the Electricity Affordability Committee actually says that this information is not a public record as defined by Section 1000212 of the FOIA, which expressly excludes trade secrets and commercial or financial information which is of a privileged and confidential nature. So this is our bid. This is our RFP response that we put in, when we were told that the response would be kept confidential. So I believe that's, we have, I agree with Council Mayorek that we have gone through and we are in agreement that if you cannot keep the whole thing from public disclosure, that the correct redaction would be what you have before us. And we,
Ms. Mayorek, she's citing part of the RFP.
Well, I guess what I would counter to that is if they had won the process, they would be advertising this very program to the consumers of Delaware, and it wouldn't be confidential at all. So I don't think there's anything particularly proprietary about all but the 5 pages in this proposal. And the very fact that it would be public, had they won, because they'd be trying to sell it to consumers, suggests there's really nothing particularly proprietary about it. And even going to the entire document, I mean, there's rarely an entire document that is proprietary. I mean, we would have come up with at least section headings or, the introduction is not proprietary. So to suggest the entire thing is proprietary, it rarely has credibility, in my view.
Any further questions? Does anyone have a motion to make with respect to this issue?
I'll move that the 5 redacted pages be kept confidential.
I second it.
Is there any discussion on the motion to have the 5 pages redacted as was discussed on the record? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Opposed?
Is there any abstentions? The motion passes 4-1.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Number 2 is in the matter of the application of Suez Water Delaware Incorporated for a general increase in rates and for a revision to its general tariff. We have proposed order number 8935 to consider. And in this matter, I believe we have Ms. Newak.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. As you are aware, Suez Water Delaware Incorporated has an application pending before the Commission for a general increase in rates. As a part of a general rate increase application, there are statutory opportunities for interim increases. One occurs after 60 days, and one occurs at the 7-month mark. The 7-month mark from the application is on September 5th, 2016. It is, the day before our next commission meeting, which is why this is before you today on August 23rd. Unfortunately, the company had scheduling conflicts and is not able to be here. But they did file a petition with the commission that asks for the 7-month interim rate increase. This allows an increase up to 15% of gross intrastate annual revenue. That is above the $2.5 million, which was approved by this commission on April 5th. So in total, the interim rate increase that Suez is asking for is up to 15% of annual gross revenue. There is a statutory right to ask for and receive that rate increase. It is subject to refund pending the Commission's final decision in this rate application, which will be probably early next year. There was a request by the company for a waiver of the bond requirement. The Commission has previously approved that waiver at the 60-day interim rate increase, and review of staff would indicate that everything is in order with respect to the changes in the tariffs and the requested rates, as well as the financial position of the company, which would justify the waiver of the bond requirement. So staff would ask that the Commission adopt order number 8935 in docket 16-0163. And Tony Loper is here if there are any questions regarding the substance of the application.
Thank you, Ms. Mayrack. Mr. Bonar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have read the application of the water company, and the statute permits it, and we're fine with the form and order.
Thank you, Mr. Bonar. Any questions from members of the commission?
I have a question. What is the highest amount of increase that the biggest customer will face because of this incremental 1.4?
According to the tariff, it's 22.89%. No, I apologize. 27.77%.
Okay. And the average is below 15%.
Correct. Well, it allows them to.
Yeah.
The total is up to 15%.
Any questions?
Doesn't seem to be any more questions. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that the commission adopt order number 8935 as submitted.
Second the motion?
Is there any discussion on the motion to approve proposed order 8935? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Number 3, in the matter of the activities of Delaware Power and Light Company, pursuant to the energy efficiency and fuel switching provisions of the Delaware Energy Act. We're here to consider proposed order number 8879. Welcome, Mr. Goodman.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. We're very pleased with this order. I want to thank, we appreciate the way that staff and DPA drafted this and worked together to make sure it accomplished what was necessary. So we're pleased with the order. We support it. In the event the commission needs any background on the EAC or anything like that and where we're standing, I'm more than happy to provide that. But I'm very pleased with the order, and I appreciate the way it was handled by staff and media.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Mr. Willard?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This was a matter that we did discuss with Delmarva. At first, there was some disagreement on this, but we got together and worked it out, and we do agree with the order. Ms. Knotts is here if you have any questions about that from the staff point of view.
Thank you, Mr. Willard. Any questions, Commissioners? Mr. Bonar, I'm sorry.
That's quite all right, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. We had input into the language of the order, and we're satisfied with its contents.
Thank you, Mr. Bonar. Any questions, Commissioners?
Move we adopt order number 8879 as presented.
Seconded.
Is there any discussion regarding the motion to approve proposed order number 8879? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed or any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Number 4 is in the matter of defining good faith effort to make payments for water, gas, and electric utility customers with certified medical conditions. We have before us proposed order number 8930, and I would just advise council that is the staff memorandum part of the record?
As a witness?
Yes.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I will make our case and make Ms. Woodward available if necessary. But we don't need to conduct an evidentiary hearing.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Good afternoon. You have before you order number 8930 in docket 16-0295. This was a staff-initiated docket to explore whether the Commission should promulgate regulations that would define a, quote, good faith effort to make payments as it applies to medically certified customers. There had been some inquiries from the governor's office and others that prompted staff to want to look into this issue further. As you know, there were changes made in this statute in 2012 that made some fairly significant changes to the way medically certified utility customers were treated in the face of non-payment of bills with respect to termination. There had been a finding that there was some fairly significant fraud and abuse occurring in that program, and the statute, as it was changed in 2012, required that if you are a medically certified customer and not making full payments of your utility bills, that there would have to at least be a good faith effort to make payments, and there would have to be a recertification every 120 days. The statute did not actually define what a good faith effort to make payments was, but permitted the commission to promulgate regulations to that effect if necessary. We did open a docket. We published notice. There were 2 public workshops held. Written comments were solicited. A survey was made of the utilities practices in this regard, and the finding was that the utilities practices are fairly consistent across the board. They are consistent with the technical requirements of the law as well as the spirit of the law, and it was staff's finding after these 2 workshops and collecting information from the utilities that there is no need to further define what good faith effort to make payments means. I think it was a very collaborative docket. I see Ms. Scott from Delmarva here. Obviously, Delmarva is the utility most impacted by this particular law. So staff's recommendation is that the commission close the docket and not take further action. And again, Amy is here if there are any questions, and there may be other comment as well.
Ms. Scott?
Thank you, Chair Winslow and Commissioners. I wanted to echo what you heard from Ms. Mayrack in terms of the findings, and I also wanted to indicate that I thought that the way this proceeding was handled, the workshops, the opportunity to have a lot of open dialogue back and forth with staff and the other utilities about their practices and what was in place and what was expected was a very good collaborative effort, and we are satisfied with the outcome and concur with the findings and the order that is before you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Mr. Bonar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have taken part in some of the dialogue that transpired in this docket. I would point out to the commissioners that even today, although we're satisfied with the ways the rules are being interpreted, some of the largest issues we have with people who have huge balances, and I'm talking $14,000 to $20,000 with Delmarva, are people who either do not understand or choose to ignore the purpose of the medical certification. And that becomes problematic for the company, and if it becomes problematic for the company, it in turn becomes problematic for the rest of the rate base. And that obviously creates a concern on our mind as well. We're satisfied if you wish to close the docket at this point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Bonar. Are there any other parties that wish to be heard? It doesn't appear that there's anyone else present. The only comment I have is I want to thank Amy for a fine job. Thank you so much for the work you did in this docket. Seems like it was very successful. And I expect that Heaven will probably issue some huge press release because we're not actually going to do a regulation. It's like unregulatory like. It was a very solid recommendation and based upon the facts, and I think Ms. Scott and Ms. Mayrack did a good job articulating the basis for us approving it. So I hope that we have maybe a question or two or a comment, but Ms. Drexler?
This question is for Ms. Scott. In Amy's memorandum, there's a number 378 residential customers under the medical certification program, and 201 with the payment plan. Are those 201 part of that 378?
Yes.
So of the 378,
They are.
201 payment plan?
Yes.
Thank you. And Is that number still 378?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gregg?
Mr. Chair, just a general interest question, Ms. Scott, for instance, what is a medical certification? How does one acquire this? I mean,
There is a form that has to be submitted by the customer that is signed by their doctor or other licensed practitioner that is approved under the law, indicating that they have a condition such that they need to have their power on to operate equipment or for other purposes. And then that gets reviewed. When it's submitted, it gets reviewed to make sure the form is adequately completed. And assuming that it is, the account is identified as meeting the requirements of the program, and then it has to be, the form needs to be recertified every 120 days, that the condition is still in place and the requirements are still necessary.
okay, so it has to do more with the reliability of the service that they're getting.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
May we have a motion in this matter?
I move that we adopt order number 8930.
I second.
Is there any discussion on the motion to approve proposed order number 8930? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Scott, Ms. Mayrack, and thank you, Amy. We have next a hearing schedule, which has got nothing on it, which is, I guess, the second meeting in a row. Our luck is going to be out sometime soon. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to make comment to the Public Service Commission? I see no one coming forward, and I do see we had Mr. Noyes in the room, but I guess he realized I was going to call on him, so he got up and left. So we'll have to catch up with him next meeting. Mr. Howitt.
Good afternoon, Chairman Winslow, Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to address you again. We have quite a few things going on, as I'm sure you're aware. The first thing I would like to do is I'd like to offer Ms. Knotts the opportunity to address the Commission with respect to a technical monitoring consultant that would be working for the Commission.
Welcome, Ms. Knotts.
Thank you, Chairman Winslow and Commissioners. In July, Delmarva issued an RFP for the Commission's technical monitoring consultant for standard offer service. After analyzing the bid packages and the bids as stated in my memo, staff recommends Liberty Consulting Group as the Commission's technical monitoring consultant. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
They've always seemed to have done a good job in the past, and they seem to be competitive price-wise, and so the recommendation appears to be a prudent one. Any questions? We have a motion in support of the request.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Commission adopt the staff's recommendation to retain Liberty Consulting Group as the SOS technical monitoring consultant.
I second it.
Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the staff's request, Ray Liberty Consulting Company? None. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Knotts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Knotts. I would like to comment that we do have some public comment sessions with respect to the Delmarva electric and gas cases coming up. On docket number 160649, we have a public comment session scheduled for Thursday, August the 25th at 6 p.m. at our Dover office. And then we have an additional meeting set up for Monday, August the 29th at our Indian River Senior Center in Millsboro. And those will both be starting at 6 p.m. in the evening. I would also like to point out that since Delmarva serves both electric and gas in the Newcastle County area, under dockets number 160649 and 160650, which are the proposed rate increases, there will be a public comment session on Tuesday, August the 30th at 6 p.m. at the University of Delaware Arst Hall off of Pennsylvania Avenue in Wilmington, Delaware. I would also like to make note, as I have in previous meetings, staff has had an opportunity to review Delmarva Power's retail electricity pricing and long-term approaches to secure lower-priced energy. In that docket, the opportunity for public comment and written comment from any of the parties has been extended to August 31st. I just want to make note that that comment period has been extended. I would also like to note that our next commission meeting will be on September the 6th, a Tuesday again, at 1 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Howard.
Chair, one question, Mr. Howard.
Mr. Gray.
Mr. Howard, how have these public comment sessions been noticed or advertised? Where?
I believe they have been noticed by Delmarva Power, and I don't know the specific dates, but I'm sure that they've been noticed in the News Journal and also the Delaware State News.
That's correct. They're noticed in both, and
They were published on August.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very
And
much.
if not, we will move for a penalty.
actually, I believe it was your staff that was the one that was supposed to do this. But we support that 100%.
I prefer the notice and not the penalty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Back to normal, huh? Thank you all very much. The meeting is adjourned.